Marcus Webb pulled his thermal suit tighter as another gust of frozen wind screamed across the ice plains of Velrith 7. The temperature display on his wrist showed minus 140 degrees. Even with the suit, he could feel the cold trying to reach his bones. He had been walking for 3 hours, taking samples from the ice formations that dotted this frozen moon. The work was boring, repetitive, and exactly what he deserved. 2 years ago, he had been a respected professor at Earth's finest university. Now he was alone on an ice ball at the edge of known space, counting microbes in frozen rock. His scanner beeped. Something unusual was buried 30 meters ahead, inside a deep crack in the glacier. Marcus almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity had always been his weakness, even when it got him in trouble. He approached the crevasse carefully. The ice here was unstable, sheets of it hanging at odd angles like broken glass. His helmet light cut through the darkness as he lowered himself down on a cable. The walls glittered with strange colors, blues and purples that seemed to move in the light. Then he saw them. 3 objects, each about the size of his head, partially buried in the ice wall. They were shaped like eggs, but looked nothing like any egg he had ever seen. The shells seemed to be made of crystal and ice mixed together, swirling with patterns that hurt his eyes when he looked too closely. A faint light pulsed inside them, weak and getting weaker. Marcus reached out with a gloved hand and touched one. Even through the insulated glove, he felt warmth. That was impossible. Nothing warm could exist down here naturally. His scientific training screamed at him to record everything, to follow protocol, to call the research station and report a xenobiological find. But that weak pulse of light inside the egg flickered and dimmed as he watched. These things, whatever they were dying. Marcus made his decision in 3 seconds. He carefully cut the eggs free from the ice and placed them in his sample container. The walk back to the research outpost took 2 hours. Every step, he expected the lights inside the eggs to go dark completely. The outpost was small, just 4 modules connected by narrow corridors. Marcus lived alone here except for Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who spent most of her time in the biology lab and the station's AI, which Marcus had named Sarah, mostly because he needed something to talk to. He smuggled the eggs past the main sensors and into his personal quarters. Sarah's voice came through the speakers immediately. "Dr. Webb, I am detecting unauthorized biological samples in your quarters. Regulations require immediate reporting and quarantine procedures." "Sarah, please give me 24 hours before filing a report," Marcus said, already setting up equipment around the eggs. "These samples are degrading rapidly. If I don't stabilize them now, there won't be anything to report." "This violation could result in criminal charges and immediate termination of employment," Sarah replied, but her tone had shifted slightly. The AI had learned to recognize when humans were going to ignore her anyway. "I am required to note this conversation in the log." "Noted," Marcus said, not looking up from his work. The eggs needed cold. That much was obvious from where he had found them. But they also needed something else. Some kind of energy or warmth that kept the light inside them alive. Marcus worked through the night, building a specialized incubation chamber from spare parts and modified lab equipment. He calibrated temperature controls, adjusted atmospheric composition, and tried 17 different configurations before he found something that worked. The lights inside the eggs brightened. Just a little, but enough. Marcus collapsed in his chair, exhausted. His hands were shaking from fatigue and too much coffee. On his desk, family photos stared at him. His parents. His sister Sarah, frozen at age 9, the age when the genetic disease had finally won. He had been 12, old enough to understand that the doctors couldn't save her, old enough to feel completely helpless. He looked at the eggs in their makeshift incubator. "I don't know what you are," he whispered, "but you're not dying on my watch. Not this time." Sleep took him in the chair, his head on the desk beside Sarah's photo. He woke to a cracking sound. For a confused moment, Marcus thought he had dreamed everything. Then he saw the eggs. Lines of light were spreading across their surfaces. Intricate patterns like lightning frozen in ice. The shells were breaking apart, but slowly, gently, petals of crystal falling away. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. He pressed his face close to the incubator's viewing window. The first creature emerged from its egg in pieces, unfolding itself like a complicated origami. It was small, maybe the length of his forearm, with a serpentine body covered in scales that looked like living ice. Each scale caught the light and split it into colors that shouldn't exist. The creature had 4 legs, delicate and precise, and a long tail that moved with liquid grace. Its head was elegant, almost bird-like, with 2 large eyes that swirled with patterns like galaxies. Those eyes found Marcus and locked onto him. He felt something inside his chest, a pull, a connection he couldn't explain. The creature made a sound, high and pure like crystal bells, and pressed itself against the incubator wall closest to him. The second egg broke. This hatchling was slightly smaller, more energetic. It tumbled out of its shell and immediately started exploring the incubator, touching everything with its nose, its tail whipping back and forth with curiosity. The third took longer. When it finally emerged, it was the smallest of the 3, more hesitant. It stayed close to the remains of its egg, watching Marcus with eyes that seemed infinitely old and infinitely young at the same time. Marcus realized he was crying. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried. The 3 creatures were the most beautiful things he had ever seen, and they were alive. He had saved them. The first hatchling, the bold one, made that crystal bell sound again. Somehow Marcus understood it wasn't just a sound. It was trying to communicate, and more than that, he could feel something from it. Curiosity, happiness, hunger. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, not taking his eyes off the hatchlings. "Search the xenobiological database. Cross-reference with historical texts. Serpentine morphology, ice crystal composition, empathic communication." The AI was silent for a long moment. Then, "Dr. Webb, there is one match. Felkari historical records marked as extinct for approximately 10,000 years. Common name in human translation, cold dragons." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Dragons. He had found dragons. Creatures that existed only in ancient alien legends. Creatures that were supposed to be gone forever. The smallest hatchling pressed against the incubator wall, reaching one tiny clawed foot toward Marcus. Without thinking, he opened the chamber and held out his hand. The hatchling climbed onto his palm, weighing almost nothing, and curled up in his hand. Its scales were cold to the touch but somehow comfortable, like holding a handful of winter stars. The feeling of connection strengthened. Marcus could sense all 3 of them now, their emotions like colors in his mind. They were afraid but felt safe with him. They were hungry but content to wait. They trusted him completely and absolutely. "What have I gotten myself into?" Marcus whispered. Outside his quarters, boots echoed in the corridor. Dr. Tanaka was starting her morning rounds. In a few hours, the Galactic Council survey ship would arrive for its routine inspection. And Marcus was holding 3 impossible creatures that weren't supposed to exist. The first hatchling chirped at him, a sound full of hope and trust. Marcus made his second major decision in 24 hours. He would protect them. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would keep them safe. They had chosen him. He chose them back. That was how it started. A lonely scientist and 3 baby dragons against protocols, against laws, and against a galaxy that thought they were nothing but legends and profit. Marcus named them in the first hour. The bold one who had emerged first became Frost, because it seemed fearless like winter itself. The curious explorer became Nova, for the way its scales burst with light when it got excited. The gentle, careful one became Echo, because it seemed to understand and reflect everything Marcus felt. By the second day, they had doubled in size. They were now as large as house cats, and their personalities had become even more distinct. Frost was protective, always positioning itself between Marcus and the door. Nova was constantly investigating every corner of the quarters, once getting stuck behind Marcus's desk and crying until he rescued it. Echo stayed close to Marcus, following him everywhere, its large eyes tracking his every movement. The empathic bond had grown stronger too. Marcus no longer just sensed vague emotions from the hatchlings. He could feel their specific needs. When Nova was hungry, Marcus's own stomach ached. When Frost was alert to danger, his heart rate increased. When Echo felt content, a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with temperature. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dr. Yuki Tanaka discovered them on the 3rd morning. Marcus had been too tired, too focused on keeping the hatchlings alive. He had forgotten to lock his door. Yuki walked in carrying a datapad, already talking about chemical analysis results, and stopped dead when she saw Nova perched on Marcus's desk, its tail wrapped around his coffee mug. For 5 long seconds, nobody moved. Then Yuki slowly closed the door behind her, her eyes never leaving Nova. The hatchling tilted its head, studying her with interest. Marcus could feel Nova's curiosity mixed with caution. "Marcus," Yuki said softly. "What is that?" "A cold dragon," Marcus replied. There was no point in lying now. 3 of them, actually. As if summoned, Frost emerged from under the bed where it had been sleeping, placing itself between Yuki and Marcus. Echo peeked out from behind Marcus's chair, watching nervously. Yuki's hand went to her mouth. "Cold dragons are extinct. They've been extinct for thousands of years." "Apparently not completely." Marcus stood up, moving carefully so as not to startle either Yuki or the hatchlings. "I found their eggs dying in the ice. I couldn't just leave them. Do you understand what you've done?" Yuki's voice was rising. "The regulations alone, the protocols you've broken. If the council finds out, you'll be arrested. They could execute you for unauthorized xenobiological contact with an undocumented species." "I know. And you did it anyway?" "Yes," Yuki stared at him. Then her expression changed, softening as she looked back at the hatchlings. Nova had crept closer, sniffing the air in her direction. Its scales shifted colors, blues and greens flowing across its body. "May I?" Yuki asked, extending her hand slowly toward Nova. "Ask them, not me," Marcus said. "They make their own choices." Nova approached Yuki's hand cautiously, stretching its neck to sniff her fingers. Then it made that crystal bell sound and rubbed its head against her palm. Marcus felt Nova's approval through the bond. This human was safe. This human could be trusted. Yuki laughed, a sound of pure wonder. "Its scales are so cold, but not unpleasant cold. Like touching winter air made solid." She looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "They're magnificent." "They're also growing fast," Marcus said. "And I think they need more than just temperature control and basic nutrients. Watch this." He focused on Frost, sending a wave of affection through the bond. The hatchling's scales brightened immediately, glowing from within. The light pulsed in rhythm with Marcus's heartbeat. "They metabolize emotions," Marcus explained. "Specifically positive emotional energy. Affection, care, happiness. When I'm stressed or afraid, they become dimmer. When I'm calm and focused on them, they thrive." "That's impossible," Yuki whispered. "But I'm watching it happen. There's more." Marcus pulled up files on his computer. "I've been researching everything I can find about cold dragons in the historical databases. Most of it is from Velkari sources, and most of that is either religious texts or propaganda. But I've pieced together some facts. Cold dragons were hunted to extinction by the Velkari Empire because their crystalline hearts, once fully mature, can power faster than light drives for centuries. A single adult cold dragon heart could power a warship for 500 years. Yuki's face went pale. "Marcus, if anyone finds out these exist..." "I know. Every collector, every corporation, every military power in the galaxy will want them." Marcus felt sick saying it out loud. Through the bond, he felt the hatchlings pick up on his fear. All 3 of them moved closer to him, pressing against his legs. The Velkari texts also say cold dragons were sacred guardians, bonded to the ancient temples. The bond I'm experiencing, it's not just empathy, it's something deeper. The dragons choose their bonded partners, and once the bond forms, it's permanent. Neurological. Quantum entangled, according to one very old text. Bonded partners? Yuki looked at Frost, Nova, and Echo. "You mean they've bonded to you specifically?" "Yes, they imprinted when they hatched. I was the first thing they saw, the first one to show them care. Now we're connected." Marcus knelt down, and all 3 hatchlings climbed on him. Frost on his shoulders, Nova on his back, Echo in his arms. I can feel them all the time. Their hunger, their happiness, their fear, and I think they feel me too. Echo looked up at Marcus and for the first time projected something into his mind that felt almost like words. Not spoken words, but concepts, emotions shaped into meaning. Safe, warm home father. Marcus's throat tightened. "They think I'm their parent." "Maybe you are," Yuki said quietly. A proximity alarm sounded through the station. Sarah's voice followed immediately. Galactic Council survey ship approaching. Estimated arrival time 23 minutes. All personnel report to main bay for inspection protocols. Marcus and Yuki locked eyes. The inspection. He had completely forgotten about the routine inspection. "We need to hide them," Yuki said, already moving. "The sleeping quarters won't be searched unless they have reason. We can seal them in here, shut down all the monitoring equipment." "No," Marcus said firmly. Through the bond, he felt the hatchling's fear spiking in response to his anxiety. "They'll panic if I leave. They need me close. Then we make you unavailable." "You're sick," quarantined with possible bacterial infection. I'll handle the inspection team. Will that work? It has to. Yuki was already reprogramming Sarah's logs. I'm deleting the last 3 days of environmental data from your quarters. No heat signatures, no atmospheric anomalies. As far as the records show, you've been alone with a standard equipment malfunction that's been repaired. Nova chirped nervously and phased through Marcus's desk, disappearing into the solid material and reappearing on the other side. Both humans froze. Did that just... Yuki started. Phase through solid matter? Marcus finished. That's new. What else can they do that you haven't told me? I don't know. They're learning new abilities every few hours. Marcus gathered the hatchlings close. Frost was now generating a field of cold around itself. Frost forming on the surfaces nearby. Echo had made itself nearly invisible, its scales matching the background perfectly. The proximity alarm sounded again. 15 minutes, go, Marcus told Yuki. I'll keep them calm and quiet. Just don't let the inspectors come to this section. Yuki nodded and ran for the door. She paused at the threshold. Marcus, after this is over, we need a real plan. They're growing too fast. In a week, maybe 2, we won't be able to hide them anymore. I know. She left. Marcus locked the door behind her and turned to his 3 hatchlings. They were all looking at him with those impossibly deep eyes, scared but trusting. Frost pressed against his leg. Nova climbed onto his desk, knocking over his coffee mug in the process. Echo wrapped its tail around his arm. Through the walls, Marcus could hear the docking procedures beginning. Voices in the corridor. Official bureaucratic voices discussing power couplings and supply requisitions. Normal, boring inspection things. One of those voices paused outside his door. What's in this section? Private quarters for Dr. Webb, Yuki's voice responded smoothly. He's currently under medical quarantine with a possible infection. We've sealed the section. Sensors are showing some unusual energy readings from that area. Fluctuating temperatures. Marcus's heart stopped. Nova made a tiny, frightened sound. He pulled all 3 hatchlings close, sending them feelings of calm, of safety, of hiding very, very quietly. Equipment malfunction, Yuki said. The heating system has been acting up in the extreme cold. We've ordered replacement parts. A long pause. Marcus held his breath. The hatchlings had gone completely still, understanding somehow that they needed to be quiet. Very well. Include it in your maintenance report. We'll move on to the biology lab. The voices faded down the corridor. Marcus slowly let out his breath. The hatchlings relaxed slightly but remained alert. Through the bond, Marcus could feel Frost's determination to protect him. If anyone tried to come through that door, Nova's readiness to run or hide. Echo's absolute trust that Marcus would keep them safe. 2 hours later, the inspection team left. Yuki returned to Marcus's quarters, exhausted and shaking. That was too close, she said, slumping against the wall. Marcus, what are we going to do? They're going to keep growing. We can't hide 3 dragons forever. Marcus looked at Frost, Nova, and Echo. They were already noticeably larger than they had been that morning. In 1 week after the inspection, Marcus discovered the terrible truth about why cold dragons had been hunted to extinction. He found it buried in an encrypted Velkari historical archive that Yuki had managed to access through questionable means. The text was clinical, matter of fact, describing cold dragons as if they were machines instead of living beings. Their crystalline hearts formed over 30 years of life, growing in complexity and power. Once mature, a single heart could power the fastest ships in the galaxy for 5 centuries without degradation. The Velkari Empire had built its dominance on cold dragon hearts, hunting them systematically until none remained. What made Marcus sick was the rest of it. The archive described breeding programs, forced bonding experiments, and efficient harvesting techniques. Cold dragons were intelligent. They understood what was being done to them. They had families, children, emotional connections, and they had been farmed like crops. Marcus closed the file and looked at his 3 hatchlings, now the size of large dogs and still growing. Frost was curled by the door as always, watchful even in sleep. Nova was attempting to squeeze into a storage container, convinced something interesting was inside. Echo rested its head on Marcus's lap, eyes half closed in contentment. They trusted him completely. They had no idea what the galaxy would do to them if it learned they existed. We can't stay here, Marcus said to Yuki, who sat across from him, her face pale from reading the same files. Even if we manage to hide them through the next inspection, eventually someone will find out. And when they do, every corporation, every government, every collector in known space will come for them, Yuki finished. She looked at the hatchlings with grief in her eyes. They're babies. Just babies. And the galaxy will tear them apart for parts. Nova finally got the storage container open and tumbled inside with a triumphant chirp. Even in this dark moment, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. Through the bond, he felt Nova's joy at solving the puzzle. That bond had grown stronger every day. Marcus could now sense the hatchlings from anywhere in the station. When he concentrated, he could even see through their eyes, feel what they felt, know what they knew. Yesterday, Echo had shown him a memory, not from its own short life, but from before. From when it was still in the egg, Marcus had seen the parent dragon, massive and beautiful, hiding the eggs in the ice with desperate care before flying away to lead hunters from her children. The parent dragon had known she would die. She had still fought to save her babies. I need to tell you something else, Yuki said quietly. I've been monitoring the network traffic in and out of the station. 3 days ago, someone accessed the inspection report from the council ship. Someone on a Velkari merchant vessel. Marcus felt cold spread through his chest. They know, they suspect. The Velkari have legends about cold dragons, too. They would recognize the energy signatures better than anyone. Yuki pulled up a star chart. The merchant ship changed course 2 days ago. It's heading this way. Based on their current speed, they'll arrive in 4 days. Frost raised its head, sensing Marcus's fear through the bond. The hatchling stood and moved closer, pressing against Marcus's side. Echo climbed fully into his lap, wrapping its tail around his arm. Nova emerged from the container and joined them, creating a protective circle around their human. The feeling through the bond was clear. They would protect him. They didn't understand the danger, but they knew Marcus was afraid and they wanted to make him feel safe. We need to evacuate, Marcus said. Take the research shuttle and run. Run where? The shuttle has a range of 3 systems. Even if we find somewhere to land, the Velkari have resources everywhere. We'd be caught within a week. Yuki stood and started pacing. We need help, real help. We need to contact Earth's Xenological Defense Corps. By the time they get here, it will be too late. And even if they arrive in time, what then? The Council has already ruled that extinct species have no legal protections. The Velkari can legally claim salvage rights to cold dragon remains. These aren't remains. These are living beings. The law doesn't care. They sat in angry silence, both understanding they were trapped. The station's computer suddenly chimed with an incoming transmission. Sarah's voice held an unusual note of concern. Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka, you have an incoming message marked urgent from vessel designation Star Merchant Velkara. The message is addressed to whoever is harboring the cold dragon specimens. Marcus and Yuki looked at each other. There was no point in pretending anymore. Play it, Marcus said. The screen lit up with the image of a Velkari. The species was reptilian, covered in dark blue scales with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with an inner light. This one wore expensive clothing and several pieces of jewelry that indicated high status. Greetings, the Velkari said in perfect human standard. Its voice was smooth, pleasant even. My name is Sharak, collector of rare biological specimens. I am aware you have discovered cold dragon hatchlings. Extraordinary luck. I wish to purchase them from you for a very generous sum. 5 million credits for each hatchling transferred immediately. 15 million credits. Marcus could pay off every debt he had, live comfortably for the rest of his life. He felt the hatchlings pressing closer to him, sensing his turmoil. If you decline this generous offer, Sharak continued, still smiling, I have already contracted a hunter named Vexithar to retrieve the specimens by other means. Vexithar is expensive but effective. I would prefer to avoid that cost and give you the opportunity to profit instead. You have 12 hours to respond. I look forward to our business relationship. The screen went dark. 12 hours, Yuki whispered. Marcus, what do we do? Marcus looked down at Echo, whose large eyes stared up at him with complete trust. He thought about his sister Sarah, dying in a hospital bed while he stood helpless. He thought about all the times in his life he had been too scared, too rule-following, too passive. We run, he said, standing up with sudden determination. We take the shuttle, we go as far as we can, and we keep running until we find somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe. Then we make somewhere safe. Marcus started gathering supplies, throwing them into bags with shaking hands. I'm not giving them up. I don't care about laws or credits or protocols. They chose me. They trust me. I'm their family now, and family protects each other. Through the bond, Marcus felt the hatchlings' response to his determination. Their own resolve strengthened to match his. Frost's scales hardened, becoming more like armor. Nova's eyes began to glow brighter, energy building inside its small body. Echo projected a feeling of absolute loyalty directly into Marcus's mind. They started loading the shuttle 2 hours later, working in the darkness of Velrith 7's permanent night. Supplies, equipment, the specialized environmental controls the hatchlings needed. The shuttle was small, meant for short-range research trips, not for fleeing across star systems. But it was all they had. They were nearly finished when Sarah spoke again. Dr. Webb, sensors are detecting an unscheduled vessel entering the system. It is not the Velkari merchant ship. This vessel matches the signature of a Hunter-class attack craft. Estimated time to station arrival, 4 hours, Vexthar. The Hunter hadn't waited 12 hours. Of course not. Why negotiate when you could simply take what you wanted? How long until the shuttle is ready? Marcus asked, running now, the hatchlings keeping pace beside him. 30 minutes for pre-flight checks, Yuki replied, her voice tight with fear. We're not going to make it. We'll make it. Marcus didn't know if he believed his own words, but he projected confidence through the bond. The hatchlings needed to stay calm. They worked frantically, cutting corners on safety checks, overriding launch protocols. 20 minutes, 15, 10. An explosion rocked the station. Alarm screamed. Sarah's voice became mechanical, emotionless, in emergency mode. Hull breach in Docking Bay 3. Unidentified armed individuals have boarded the station. Security protocols engaging. Run! Yuki grabbed equipment with all 4 arms, shoving it into the shuttle. Marcus scooped Echo into his arms and ran, Frost and Nova racing beside him. Behind them, he could hear footsteps, shouts in Velkari language, weapons charging. They reached the shuttle and piled inside. Yuki slammed the hatch closed and threw herself into the pilot's seat. Marcus strapped Echo down, made sure Frost and Nova were secure. The engines fired, loud and rough. Through the shuttle's small window, Marcus saw figures entering the bay. Velkari in combat armor, moving with military precision. Leading them was something else, something larger. A being covered in dark armor, covered with weapons, its face hidden behind a helmet that gleamed with targeting sensors. Vexthar, the Hunter. The Hunter raised an arm, pointing a massive weapon at the shuttle. Frost growled. A sound Marcus had never heard before, deep and resonant. The hatchling's scales began to glow with inner fire. Hold on. Yuki screamed and launched the shuttle. The weapon fired. An energy blast hit the shuttle's side, spinning them violently. Warning lights flashed across every console. The shuttle burst out of the bay and into space, engines screaming, emergency systems barely holding together. Behind them, Velrith 7 station grew smaller. Ahead, the darkness of space offered no comfort. Mark. The shuttle crashed more than landed, tearing a long scar across the ice before sliding to a stop near the glacial caves. Warning lights painted the interior red. Smoke filled the cabin. Marcus's ears rang from the impact, but he was already moving. Unbuckling Echo and checking on Frost and Nova. All 3 hatchlings were shaken, but unhurt. Through the bond, Marcus felt their fear and confusion, but also their trust in him. They believed he would protect them. He just hoped he could live up to that belief. Everyone out, Yuki shouted, kicking open the emergency hatch. The Hunter ship will land in minutes. We need to get to the caves. They ran across the ice, Marcus carrying Echo while Frost and Nova bounded alongside. The hatchlings were now the size of wolves, having grown even more in the stress of the last few hours. Their scales glowed with agitation, leaving trails of light in the darkness. The caves loomed ahead, the same crevasse where Marcus had found the eggs. It felt like a lifetime ago instead of just 2 weeks. They descended into the darkness, Yuki's helmet light and the hatchling's glow providing illumination. Deep in the caves, they stopped to catch their breath. The ice walls around them held strange formations, beautiful and alien. Marcus set Echo down and checked his equipment. 1 pistol with a half-charged energy cell, some climbing gear, a medical kit. Pathetic defenses against a professional hunter. This won't work, Yuki said, voicing what they were both thinking. We can't fight Vexthar. The Hunter has military-grade weapons and armor. We're scientists with 1 pistol and 3 baby dragons. Marcus started to answer when sudden pain exploded in his head. Not his pain. Echo's pain. The hatchling was thrashing, crying out in that crystal bell voice, but this time the sound was anguished. Frost and Nova were also writhing, all three hatchlings clearly suffering. What's happening? Yuki moved toward them, but Marcus held up a hand. He could feel it through the bond. The hatchlings weren't just in pain. They were sharing something with him. Forcing it through the connection with desperate urgency. A memory. No, many memories. Not their own memories, but ancestral ones, passed down through generations of cold dragons. Marcus's vision blurred. Suddenly he wasn't in the cave anymore. He was flying through space on wings of ice and starlight. He was hunting among frozen moons, breathing in vacuum, singing songs that made stars resonate. He was bonded to a Velkari warrior, fighting side by side, their minds connected in perfect harmony. Then the memory changed. Betrayal, nets and chains, dragons screaming as they were harvested, their hearts cut out while they still lived. The warrior he had trusted holding the knife. Centuries of this. Hunting. Harvesting. Until the last cold dragons had hidden their final eggs and died fighting to give those eggs a chance. Marcus came back to himself gasping. His face was wet with tears. The hatchlings had collapsed around him, exhausted from forcing the memories through the bond. But he understood now. He understood everything. The bond, he whispered. It's not just empathy. It's everything. When a cold dragon bonds, they share their entire species' history. All their knowledge, all their power. But it only works if the bond is real. If it's based on trust and love. Marcus, what are you talking about? He looked at Yuki with new understanding. The Velkari tried to force the bond. They tried to make cold dragons into weapons and tools. But you can't force this kind of connection. It has to be chosen freely by both sides. When the dragons realized the Velkari were betraying them, the bonds broke. That's why the Empire fell. They lost access to everything the dragons provided. Frost raised its head and looked at Marcus. Through the bond, Marcus felt the hatchling's confirmation. Yes, the human understands now. The human is truly bonded. We are one. A sound echoed from the cave entrance, footsteps, multiple sets, mechanical sounds of weapons powering up, voices speaking in Velkari coordinating a search pattern. They're here, Yuki breathed. Marcus should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something else. The bond was changing, deepening, becoming something more. He could feel not just the hatchlings' emotions, but their abilities. Their power was his power. His determination was their determination. Take these, Marcus said, handing Yuki his gun and equipment. Hide deeper in the caves. Don't come out no matter what you hear. What are you gonna do? What family does? We protect each other. Frost, Nova, and Echo stood, forming a line beside Marcus. They were still young, still small compared to what they would become. But in that moment, they looked fierce, ready. The hunters appeared around a bend in the cave, 5 Velkari in combat armor, and at their center, Vexthar. The hunter was massive, easily 7 feet tall, covered in black armor that absorbed light. Its helmet had dozens of sensor arrays, all focused on Marcus and the hatchlings. Dr. Webb. Vexthar's voice was surprisingly soft, coming through a translator. I am impressed you survived this long. But this ends now. Surrender the hatchlings and I will make your death quick. No, Marcus said simply. You cannot fight us. You're one human with 3 juveniles against professional hunters. Be reasonable. I'm done being reasonable. Marcus felt the bond pulse with power. Frost, show me what you see. Suddenly, Marcus's perception split. He could still see through his own eyes, but also through Frost's. The hatchling's vision was different. Seeing heat signatures through the ice walls, detecting the weak points in armor, tracking movement with predatory precision. He could see 2 more hunters hidden behind formations waiting to flank them. Fire! Vexthar commanded. The hunters raised their weapons. Marcus didn't think. He just reacted, and the hatchlings reacted with him. Their movements perfectly synchronized through the bond. Frost generated a wall of ice between them and the energy blasts, thick enough to absorb the first volley. Nova phased through the cave floor and emerged behind the flanking hunters, its young roar echoing through the caves. Echo projected fear directly into the Velkari's minds, an empathic attack that made them stumble and cry out. Marcus was moving too, not consciously controlling his body, but letting the bond guide him. He could feel where enemies were without seeing them. He knew when weapons would fire before they did. It was like fighting with 3 extra bodies, 3 extra sets of senses. Frost's ice wall shattered, but they were already moving. Nova had disabled one hunter, using its phase ability to reach inside the armor and destroy power couplings. Echo's mental attack had disrupted two others. Marcus grabbed a fallen weapon and fired, his aim unnaturally perfect because Frost was guiding his hand through the bond. But there were still too many. A blast hit Marcus in the side, burning through his suit. Pain exploded across his ribs. He fell, crying out. Through the bond, the hatchlings felt his pain as their own. They screamed in rage and fear. Frost charged at the hunter who had shot Marcus, growing larger as rage fueled its body. Nova became a blur of motion, too fast to track. Echo's mental attack intensified, causing two hunters to turn on each other in confusion. Vexthar moved through the chaos like a shadow, ignoring the hatchlings and focusing on Marcus. The hunter's hand closed around Marcus's throat, lifting him off the ground. Fascinating, Vexthar said, studying Marcus as he struggled. A true bond. I have read of such things but never witnessed one. Pity it must end. Marcus couldn't breathe. His vision darked at the edges. Through the bond, he felt the hatchlings' terror and fury. They were trying to reach him, but the other hunters were holding them back with nets and electric weapons designed for capturing animals. No, not like this. Not when they were so young. Not when they had trusted him. Something inside Marcus broke. Or maybe it awakened. The bond exploded with power, flooding through every cell of his body. He stopped struggling against Vexithar's grip. Instead, he grabbed the hunter's arm with both hands and felt ice spread from his touch. Not ice he was creating, but ice the hatchlings were creating through him. Vexthar's armor frosted over. The hunter's grip loosened in surprise. Marcus dropped to the ground and the hatchlings were there instantly, all three of them pressing against him. Their scales glowed brighter than ever before. Through the bond, Marcus felt something impossible happening. The hatchlings were sharing their life force with him, pushing their energy into his wounded body, healing him but also transforming him. His wound closed. His strength returned but multiplied. He could feel the cold of Velrith 7, but it didn't hurt anymore. It felt like home. Marcus stood, the hatchlings beside him. The hunters who remained conscious took a step back. Even Vexithar seemed uncertain. This is not possible, the hunter said. You're human. Humans cannot channel dragon abilities. Maybe they couldn't before, Marcus replied, his voice strange in his own ears, harmonizing with crystal tones. But we're bonded, truly bonded. That means we share everything. Their power is mine. My determination is theirs. We're family. He raised his hand and ice erupted from the cave walls, spreading like living crystal. The hunters tried to run but were caught, frozen in place. Not dead. Marcus was careful about that, but immobilized. Only Vexthar remained free, the hunter's advanced armor protecting against the ice. Impressive. But Sharek will send more hunters. Better hunters. You cannot run forever. Then we won't run, Marcus said. We'll fight. Every step of the way. Vexthar was silent for a moment. Then the hunter did something unexpected. It lowered its weapons. You truly love them. I can see it. The 24 hours passed too quickly. Marcus spent them preparing for the inevitable. Yuki rigged what few weapons they had while Marcus trained with the hatchlings, learning to use the bond more efficiently. Every minute, Frost, Nova, and Echo grew larger, stronger. They were now the size of horses, their scales harder, their abilities more controlled. But they were still children, still learning, still vulnerable. Ships are entering the system, Yuki announced from her portable scanner. Lots of them. I'm reading Velkari corporate fleet signatures, independent hunter vessels, and... Oh no, what? Galactic Council enforcement cruiser. Marcus, they're all coming here. Everyone wants the hatchlings. Yuki looked up with fear in her eyes. We can't fight all of them. Marcus felt the hatchlings' fear through the bond. They understood enough to know they were trapped. He pulled them close, feeling their cold scales against his skin. The bond had changed him. He no longer needed heavy thermal gear on Velrith 7's frozen surface. He could see in darkness like they could. He could feel the molecular structure of ice around him. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough against fleets of ships. Through the bond, Echo shared a memory. The parent dragon's final moments. She had been alone, surrounded by hunters, dying. But she had been singing, her voice carrying across space itself. A call for help that no one had answered because there were no more dragons to hear. Except there were 3 young dragons, her children. Who could sing back? Echo wants to try something, Marcus said slowly. Something the parent did. A call across space, a call to who? There are no other coal dragons. No, but there are humans. Millions of humans. And humans have a reputation for being stubborn about protecting things they care about, even things that aren't human. Marcus didn't fully understand what he was planning. He just knew it felt right. Through the bond, he helped the hatchlings focus. Frost, Nova, and Echo began to sing together, their voices creating harmonics that resonated through the ice, through the air, through space itself. Marcus joined them, adding his human voice to their crystal tones. The bond amplified it, carried it further than any natural sound could travel. They sang about fear and hope, about children in danger, about family fighting to survive. They sang in frequencies that touched emotions directly, bypassing language. The song reached out across the darkness, and humanity heard. 2 hours later, Yuki's scanner lit up with new signals. Marcus, more ships are arriving. Different signatures. These are Earth vessels. Civilian ships mostly, but some military. They're taking positions between us and the Velkari fleet. Marcus felt tears on his face. They came, we called, and they came. Not just Earth ships. I'm reading vessels from a dozen human colonies. They're broadcasting on all channels. They're saying... Yuki's voice cracked. They're saying humanity protects its own, and anyone bonded to a human is human enough. The standoff in space began. Velkari ships on one side, human ships on the other. Council enforcers trying to mediate in between. Communications flew back and forth. Threats, counter-threats, legal arguments. The Velkari claimed salvage rights to extinct species. Humans argued the dragons weren't extinct, and even if they were bonded to a human citizen. On Velrith 7's surface, Marcus and the hatchlings waited. Through the bond, he could feel ships moving above, feel the tension building. It would only take one shot fired, one moment of violence, and everything would explode into war. A new ship entered the system, different from all the others. Sleeker, faster, radiating authority. Yuki checked its signature and her face went pale. That's Sharak's personal flagship. The Velkari collector is here personally. A transmission came through, directed at Marcus specifically. Sharak's face appeared, smiling that reptilian smile. Dr. Webb, you have caused quite the situation, but I am a reasonable being. I offer you a deal. Give me just one hatchling. Keep the other two. In exchange, I will call off all Velkari claims and grant you sanctuary on a world of my choosing. Your bonded dragons will be safe, and one will help advance science. Everyone wins. Through the bond, Marcus felt the hatchlings' response. Frost sent determination they would not be separated. Nova sent defiance they would fight first. Echo sent a simpler emotion directed at Marcus. Trust. Whatever he decided, they trusted him. No deal, Marcus said. Sharak's smile faded. Be reasonable. I have 20 warships in this system. Your human friends are brave but outgunned. Many will die if this becomes violent. Give me one dragon and save countless lives. No deal, Marcus repeated. They're not property. They're not resources. They're children. My children. And you don't negotiate with children's lives. Then you condemn yourself and all these humans to death for sentiment. Sharak's eyes narrowed. I will give you one final chance. The Galactic Council is preparing to rule in my favor. Extinct species with no registered population have no rights. I will have legal authorization to take all 3 hatchlings by force. The transmission ended. Yuki grabbed Marcus's arm. He's right. I'm monitoring the council channels. They're about to issue a ruling. Once it's official, the human ships won't be able to interfere without starting an interstellar incident. Marcus felt despair rising. They had fought so hard, come so far. The hatchlings pressed against him, trying to comfort him even though they were the ones in danger. Through the bond, he felt their acceptance. If this was where their story ended, at least they were together. At least they were loved. Then Yuki's scanner exploded with activity. New ships. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Coming from all directions! Marcus looked at the display. Ships were pouring into the system from all over. Not just human ships now. Other species, other civilizations. Small ships barely more than shuttles. Large freighters. Even a few warships from non-aligned worlds. They're broadcasting messages, Yuki said, her voice filled with wonder. They heard the song. Species from across the galaxy heard it and understood. They're saying they won't let the cold dragons go extinct. They're saying they'll protect them. The sky above Velrith 7 filled with ships. The Velkari fleet was completely surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1, 20 to 1, more arriving every minute. Not all of them were powerful ships. Not all were armed, but there were so many. Sharak's voice came through again, but the confidence was gone. This is madness. You would risk galactic war over 3 animals? A new voice answered. Human, female, with the authority of Earth's Xenological Defense Corps. They're not animals. They're sentient beings bonded to a human citizen. And yes, we would risk war, because that's what humans do. We're stupid and stubborn, and we protect things that matter. These dragons matter, other voices joined in. A Krellian trader saying their people would not stand by and watch genocide repeated. A Matharian scientist offering sanctuary on their world. A Vortan warrior clan challenging Vexthar personally for the dishonor of hunting children. The Galactic Council's transmission came through, and for once they sounded uncertain. In light of overwhelming galactic opinion and the clear evidence of sentience and bonding, the Council rules that cold dragons are to be granted full protection as an endangered sentient species. All salvage claims are void. Dr. Webb is appointed guardian until proper preservation protocols are established. Sharak's transmission cut off without another word. Slowly, the Velkari ships began to withdraw. They were business people, not warriors. This fight was no longer profitable. Marcus collapsed in the snow, the hatchlings surrounding him, all of them crying in relief. They had won, not through strength or weapons or cunning. They had won because the galaxy had decided that some things were more important than profit or power. The next weeks passed in a blur. Earth sent a proper delegation to Velrith 7, scientists, diplomats, and military personnel to ensure the hatchlings' safety. They brought equipment, supplies, and most importantly, they brought hope. Yuki discovered something amazing while analyzing the energy discharge from Marcus and the hatchlings' battle with the hunters. The signal had resonated through subspace in a way that nothing artificial could replicate. When they examined data from distant systems, they found responses, faint signals coming from other ice worlds, other frozen moons, more eggs. Not many, but enough. Cold dragons weren't extinct. They had just been sleeping, waiting for the galaxy to be safe enough for them to wake up. Marcus became the unlikely head of the Cold Dragon Conservation Program. Earth granted him a facility in Antarctica, a vast frozen wilderness where the dragons could grow safely. Teams were sent to recover the other eggs, carefully, respectfully, with Marcus's guidance to ensure the dragons would be protected, not exploited. Frost, Nova, and Echo continued to grow. Within 6 months, they were massive, beautiful creatures as large as small ships. Their scales shimmered with starlight. They could fly through vacuum, breathe ice that could cut through starship hulls, and sing songs that made space itself resonate with joy. But they were still Marcus's children. They still curled around him when thunder scared them. They still brought him gifts of pretty ice formations. They still communicated through the bond with feelings of love and trust and belonging. Other eggs hatched. Other dragons emerged, some bow,